66,663 people died in the 3 months of fighting that followed D-Day. The Normandy landings kicked off the last phase of the war in the West and began the liberation of France and of Europe. They are celebrated to this day. 80 years later, in June 2024, that celebration rang loud and clear through the coast and towns of Normandy. The 40 Cathedral became a site of particular importance, filled not just with hymns and remembrance services, but also with 80 knitted and crocheted dioramas depicting scenes from the film The Longest Day. 180 volunteers worldwide crafted these moments from the first 80 hours of the invasion, 80 years after they occurred.
I'm Tansy Forster, and I've been living here in the area of Carentan for the last 23 years. I came up with a wacky idea about knitting, crocheting the longest day in yarn, and ended up as 80 metres, and we've called it the longest yarn. So I designed the whole thing to tell the story, and then I found the people that would like to do it. The actual thing was I gave them a photograph of what we were trying to depict, and they were to interpret that, but their perspective had to be absolutely correct, that the proportions were correct, so the men looked as though they would fit onto the glider, for example, all of that sort of thing. And then they could knit their own creation, if you like.
For a closer look at these woolen warriors, we travelled to Diana and Jenny's knitting table in Surrey, England.
So we decided to get involved because I think we both have got military men in our family's history, which we felt quite strongly that if this could be something in their memory that could depict what was the most amazing historic invasion in history, probably ever.
So my family connection is with my father-in-law, who was in the Royal Tank Corps. And although he didn't go to D-Day, he survived the war, but he was injured at El Alamein, and so he was in the hospital ship on D-Day. And so when we had the opportunity to choose a panel that we wanted to do, I wanted to have a tank in the panel in memory of him.
The little soldier here, of which we're knitting 55 of them to go on the panel, 11 rows of 5 soldiers marching along the base. So it starts off with a body, then these boots have been sewn on, then this is a jacket that you add to it, which has got a collar, it's got edging down the side, and so the next thing you do is you put the jacket on and sew it on, and then there's 2 arms with hands that get sewn on. Then there's Jenny's knapsack and the pocket.
And the helmet. So the helmet, we had to do so many different times to get the right fit, the right shape, because the first one we did had too big a brim. It looked like a First World War helmet. If you didn't quite get it right, it went completely flat and didn't go around their head. So the helmet was quite a feat to get the right fit.
The scale, we felt really strongly about the scale that everything, if it was a truck, it had to be able to fit 8 men. And then the same with the tanks, that we felt very strongly that a tank could probably have at least 4 men inside and a couple of men outside. So we made sure that our tanks, it all fitted, and that our tank would fit in our landing ship.
And then, of course, for the tank corps, they wore a beret rather than a hard hat. And so it was trying to get a beret that would fit onto the little tiny weeny head, and making sure we had the insignia so that it actually was clear what it actually was.
Every diorama here tells the true story of a moment during this crucial battle. There is the story of Piper Bill Millen, whose song of war rang out across the beaches of France. He accompanied the men unarmed, but for the ceremonial dagger in his stocking. And now, 80 years later, his bravery has been remembered through dioramas made from the very wool that once made up his favorite jumper. Then there is the story of the small church on Angoville-Plon, where two medics, Kenneth Moore and Robert Wright, cared for 50 wounded Allied and German troops alike, enduring stray mortar fire as the Isle ran red with blood, saving lives all the while. Even medical attention is rendered in yarn. And there is also this little girl who picked flowers for the medics only to be cut down by shell fire mere minutes after delivering them. 80 years later, there is again war in Europe, not to mention North Africa and the Middle East. It seems all too easy to start and cheer on wars and to justify them with historical grievances. But an honest look at history seems to teach this above all, that even after 80 years, in quaint little northern French towns, the wounds of battle do not fully heal.